It's super nice to have you on
Yeah.
to talk a little bit about, yourself, your experience in AI agents, corporate sustainability. And I know your CV. I've looked at what you've done. I think it's very cool. You worked for some startups and giants like BMW. You made a shift at some point from design to entering the ESG universe. What sparked that change for you?
Maybe it's more related still than it maybe seems like, but user experience and actual design of the software and the digital experience is such a critical factor towards actually driving adoption and making it accessible for organizations to drive impact. If you look into the software and the solutions that were just out there, then we kind of started to look into it. We are so bad when it comes to just the usability and the user experience, the interface. You really needed a lot of training in order to actually use them. It was one of the key motivator also to see how would AI and how would a leapfrogged and way improved user experience actually move the needle for organizations to drive impact. Because I think you can offer people tools, but if nobody knows how to use a tool, it's not worth much, right?
So do you think that utility and ease of use is one of the biggest blockers that the industry has had?
It's not one of the biggest blockers. There are other big blockers, but I would say it definitely helps teams to be sustainability managers to be productive at their work and create the shift from spending a lot of time on data collection management and moving more towards being intelligently augmented in their work with the goals they're having, which should not just be about creating transparency via reporting compliancy, but even more importantly, actually driving impact for the organization and bringing the business value that sustainability can create and actually environmental goals together. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it makes sense. And I mean, they need to walk hand in hand, I assume. When do you think sustainability became such a complex challenge for businesses? Because you've been in this space for a long time. Did you see any point along the way where it changed?
Can you repeat that question? I'm sorry.
When do you think sustainability became such a complex challenge for businesses?
I think sustainability always been complex, to be honest, because it's a very complex topic.
Yeah, why is that?
Even if you're taking an example, like, do you take a plastic bag or you take a paper bag when you go to a supermarket? That by itself is a very complex question, right? Because how do you measure it? You can say the plastic bag, obviously has plastic, but they are produced in a way where they're very energy efficiently produced. The problem here is waste. But if you look at the energy consumption of creating a plastic bag, and if you look into CO2, for example, depending on which metrics you look for, you could create an argumentation for making the plastic bag look like the most sustainable thing, which is obviously not true.
Do we have a net answer on this question? Because I think that is a question most people actually experience in their life.
I would not like to make say something wrong on the podcast on that. So I don't know if I would like to vote on it because it's a complex thing. It depends on what plastic and then what paper bag we're talking about.
Right.
What exactly is the paper bag? Was the paper, sent from somewhere to what's the value chain? So it's a complex question. It always depends, right? It depends. Usually the paper bag should be pretty good or better when it comes to sustainability, but it depends. And the problem of it depends you have in a lot of things when it comes to sustainability because it's a big thing. You're trying to measure the impact, and all our products and services we're using these days have a very complex value chain and a very complex stream of different actions that led you to be in that moment of using a service or product, right? And everything that comes afterwards. So I think it always has been complex. In solving the complexity is also the opportunity to drive impact, right? So I think sustainability is something that is hard for people to solve without partners, without looking into the value chain, right? So
and you mentioned that obviously AI has become a big part of it, and that the difficulty of using AI to support the sustainability process is a big challenge, the biggest one maybe. But if we would sit in and listen to a typical meeting with somebody who's responsible for sustainability at the company, what do you think they would highlight as their biggest challenges? Are there any unsaid challenges that they have? And maybe even that AI is being used now to try to support with?
Yeah. Sometimes I'm seeing myself a bit as a therapist. I think sustainability managers to feel better about their work and also drive impact. That's essentially what we're trying to help them in the end, right? We have the same goals that sustainability managers have with what we're doing. Our core motivation is to make sustainability managers as successful as possible at their work, and therefore the organization to be successful when it comes to sustainability and driving impact.
And if
Now,
you
I think
would, yeah, go on. Sorry.
a common challenge that I hear daily is that the amount of time it takes for sustainability managers or sustainability teams to get the data, manage the data, convert the data in the right way, enrich the data so it's actually usable, and actually calculate the emissions, writing the reports, researching what is required from a compliancy perspective, identifying the gaps, checking that as far as like if it's sufficient or not. All of these steps, they take a lot of time from the sustainability teams. And it takes so much time that the reason why the sustainability manager actually became a sustainability manager is not all of that. The reason they become a sustainability manager is because they wanted to change things. They wanted to change the company. They want to last a positive footprint in the world when it comes to what they're doing at work. But the reality is, even though that's their goal, the reality is they don't have much time for that at their job for that. They're overwhelmed with a lot of things that they have to do, maybe for compliancy, maybe for, just in order to get the transparency, understand where you are at the moment. Let's say you go to a doctor and it takes you so much time to just like analyze your blood pressure. You don't even have time to go to the gym to improve it. That's a little bit how it is with sustainability, So like in order for us to understand the status quo, it takes so much time. So this is where we help them with AI. Yeah.
Okay.
So reducing, compressing that time it takes. Yeah. So there is a new vacuum. There is a new ability for sustainability managers to focus on what they want to focus on, which is about taking the insights and taking like your current status quo and making strategic recommendations towards the company, what they should do in order to drive impact, and then managing these projects and helping the company to actually go into that direction. Also driving innovation. Sustainability is a big innovation driver as well. You can come up with new business models. You can look into how to make the business model more sustainable. But all of that requires the time for sustainability managers to actually look into that. And that's oftentimes not there.
So you're talking about an almost agentic approach to supporting your clients. How would you describe AI as you use it today, your solution of AI? Is it an optimization tool or is that a simplification?
You're asking if it's an optimization tool?
Yeah, like is that reductive or like what is the function of AI in the sustainability work? You mentioned giving recommendation and so on. It sounds like a lot of this is just optimizing to free up time. Is there something more beyond that? Is there maybe even a strategic level of how AI supports your clients today or the teams you work with?
Yeah. Well, definitely there is a part of just reducing manual work. So the automation of steps. So if I can access the company data, I can use AI to pre-fill my sustainability report to a certain percentage depending on how good the data quality is. We call it human in the loop, meaning like we don't really think that you should just use AI and just be and send it off to an auditing company and say like I have a sustainability report which I never read myself. It's actually about reducing the time it may take you to research the things, finding the content, etc., and drafting something from with AI. But then it still like requires humans in order to review it, even from a legal perspective, because there is usually a third-party auditing that has to be done on sustainability efforts, which you can also do directly on a platform. So it's a connected workflow. The auditor can also work on the same platform and review what kind of data was used, what are the sources, what actually are you reporting there. So it's a lot about like if optimizing the workflow, the automation of steps. Oftentimes sustainability managers are faced with questions. What is your scope 3? What is your scope 3 in that section for that type of business, for that business unit, for that location? And I just don't have the data always ready to answer these questions. Well, if you have an intelligent system, you can just ask the AI and you know what the calculation would be. So it's a lot about that. It's a lot about the optimization of calculations. So that is a big part, right? Then the second part, I think, which I like what you ask about is the more strategic side. So when you know where you are right now as far as your sustainability KPIs, you can actually derive strategic recommendations using AI out of them. What do I mean? So you never know what the future actually will be like as far as the impact of certain measures, but you can do a forecasting and an estimation.
Yeah.
So when we look into the past, we talk about reporting. When we talk into the future, we talk about strategy, change, which then go into your next reporting, right? You can measure blood and you can say, like, if I do that exercise, I'm going to increase my blood by that percentage. But you're just going to know it the exact amount you're going to know when you measure blood the next time, right? So that's a little bit how it is also. So we have essentially a database of best practices organizations can do, measures, projects that an organization can do to drive impact, and how much they would bring to the organization as far as impact that we can forecast, right? We can only forecast if the data has been added in the beginning in the right way, right? That's a problem. A lot of organizations tap totally in the dark. They do things and they don't really know if it brings something or not. And also you can combine it with business KPIs too. So you can say, like, how much does it cost? What is the long-term return of investment there? Do we actually maybe even save resources through it? A lot of times you can do something sustainable and actually saves you resources too. So you can combine different aspects as far as the forecasting goes. And what then happens is that the sustainability manager becomes more trustworthy in the organization, because out of a sudden now the sustainability manager can actually talk about strategic recommendations for the organizations, and the person can say what the impact will be, how much CO2 will be saved, how much are KPIs improved, what are the business aspects to this, well, how much would it cost, etc. Right? So they can give something to the upper management where they are feeling confident that the decisions they are making are actually driving impact and actually some numbers behind it. In a bigger company, numbers matter, right? You need to put numbers behind it. If you are just come up with creative ideas and push forward initiatives, but don't back your things with data, then the upper management maybe doesn't take the team that serious, right? Or thinks it's all just marketing, right? So I think that's really important.
And I got to say, I like what you did when you talked about the past and reporting and the future and strategic direction. Like you have these two, directions on the timeline, obviously.
Yeah.
So you need to make sure that your system, in your case, your AI solution, has access to all the data. Is that often a challenge? Are there any security implications there? Because for me, that would be one of the most difficult things to achieve, just making sure that you're connected everywhere.
Yeah. And look, I don't think there is one approach fits all. What we're seeing is that the data, so the way this works is the first thing you do is, as a company, you do something called double materiality assessment, or materiality assessment in general, which essentially means, like, what is actually relevant for the organization when it comes to sustainability. And there's a process how to get there, right? And I'm not going to expand on that at the moment, but there's a process how to come up with essentially your map of what matters for the company as far as sustainability. If you look at an automotive company, producing company, maybe they are more dealing with the steel plates and the materials they have in a factory. But if I'm an IT in a cloud company, I'm maybe more worried about my business travels and my cloud consumption, my energy consumption. So there are different things, right? Sustainability means different things for different organizations depending on what kind of industry you're in and what you're focusing on. That's the first step. The first things you look at what is actually relevant. You can't have everything. You don't want to look at the 0.1% change, right? You want to look at your big factors, right? And you want to stay focused on them. So you're trying to understand what is actually material for this organization when it comes to sustainability. That's step number one. That actually also tells you which data you need, right? Because maybe I need employee mobility data, maybe I need like cloud data, maybe I need this type of data, purchasing data, etc. When it comes to, let's say a corporate carbon footprint calculation, we oftentimes look at the facility data. So, for example, the buildings. We look at the mobility data. How are people moving to work, to business travels, etc. We're looking into the consumer aspects. So, for example, what are my products or services that I'm offering to the market, as far as emissions or sustainability? We're also looking into purchases. What are the purchases or assets of an organization? What have they invested in or what have they bought? and what the impact of that will be.
How difficult is it to gain access to all of this data?
Yeah, and then just to
your
finish the
clients?
list, so the fifth one is like logistics. Yeah, so when you have to move around things internally in the organization, how difficult it is, that depends again on the company.
And I was also thinking while you do that, why can't you, are we going to be at the point where we can actually track and consider everything? Because you said you can't do that. You will have to consider the things that move you in a big way. But I remember we used to track on an office level how many cookies people were eating, how much toilet paper was consumed per office per week. Like, is that not relevant? Or like, because maybe many small things could actually end up being an unexpected significant factor.
Yeah, you asked like how difficult it is to get the data into the system, right? And then oftentimes I think it's pretty much like, you obviously in a perfect world you have all data in the system, but it's not just about having the data, but it's also about data quality. So sometimes you have to ask your data, do I want to have a lot of low value data, but I have everything? Or do I want to focus on the biggest things and get the best data quality? What do I mean with data quality? So data quality is if you're thinking, for example, about your mobility emissions. The low-level data is financial data. We don't really know how we traveled. We don't really know how far. We don't really know which kind of mobility choices we made as an organization. I just can tell you we spent 100K this year on mobility. All I can do is I can just look into expenses. I can see a category of mobility and we can calculate the emissions based on only knowing how much you've spent on a category. That's still compliant. It's the lowest level of data quality, but it's compliant. You can do it in the greenhouse gas protocol. You can calculate based on it. But now you say like, well, we have that data point too, after the next one. Or I can work on, but maybe it's an important factor. Maybe that makes up a big percentage of my carbon footprint. So maybe instead of focusing on the 0.00001%, should maybe work on improving the data quality. What is a better data quality? A better data quality is to know we had this amount of flights, for this kind of distance. If we, for example, get a transaction, if we're getting a list of like the flights, for example, our AI can directly calculate the emissions, but our flight distance, we're just knowing the airports. Or maybe your train rides and your car drives, like what was the distance there? What kind of cars do you have? Right now, the sustainability manager actually gets into a position where the person can actually make strategic recommendations. But if you only know I spent 100K on mobility this year, what kind of recommendation should the person make? It doesn't even know, right? No. So the data quality is really important. The results become more accurate, more trustworthy, and they give you the ability to drive strategic direction, right? So I would say like it's equally important to focus on the data quality than it is to make sure you have everything.
And I guess this is a dialogue that you have in each case to kind of negotiate what data you can get and what's relevant, right? So it takes some time. Whoever wants to do this, they need to be prepared to maybe make some concessions on system access and
And we help organizations to understand what is the best quality and maybe where you can get that in the organization and what is the lowest level. Let's say the lowest one is purchasing data. But hey, if we're talking about facility, what would be the better data quality? Hey, you could look into the facility area, how big it was. Do you know what kind of heating you had? And that way we can work up the quality. And, obviously we always want to shoot for the highest data quality. The highest data quality allows us for the best strategic directions afterwards. But it works the full scale, right? It works with the highest and the lowest. It's just that, it's good to have the highest. But they are really augmentation and AI comes into play as well, because the AI then helps the teams to understand how they can improve the data quality, you know, and which kind of relationships they maybe need to build in the organization, which of kind of stakeholders they maybe need to involve. So it would say like, hey, maybe you should look up who's the facility manager and work with him on improving the facility data, for example, right?
And assuming that you actually manage to get all this data, I mean, that's good. Check. Let's say we have that. Then we're going into this advisory phase of everything, trying to make the best decisions. I have two kind of questions or concerns, maybe just associated with AI in general. I mean, I'm a big user of AI. One, I know that AI does hallucinate. And two, we don't really know how AI makes its decisions. Do you see any of these as being risks for guiding clients and guiding future decisions? One, there might be mistakes, hallucinations. Two, there might be kind of a black box of decision making where we don't really know how the strategic advice actually forms and why it became what it became.
Yeah. So I think it brings me back to the human in the loop topic, right? Because what we try to do, or what we're doing, is that number one, if the AI doesn't feel comfortable as far as how good the result is, it's actually going to tell you. Yeah. So essentially, tell this is not sufficient. You don't have sufficient data. The second thing is that it can create results, but you're still able to change the final results, right? So it's not a black box and you just get the polished paper afterwards, but more of a kind of a dialogue where I get a result, but I can change it, I can edit it anytime. The other thing is making transparent what are the sources, what's the reasoning behind it. So every answer you can see what the exact sources are down to the mark in the page of your document on the PDF that was used in order to get to that data, to that message, right? So I can say, okay, our climate strategy according is this. Okay, how did you get to this data point? And I can actually see, we had a PDF here, and page 163, fourth paragraph, it's actually outlined. Right? So I can actually connecting the results back to like where the sources are coming from, and then also making sure you have tolerance as far as like if you don't feel it's with the sufficient data, you maybe should make that transparent. And not to be overconfident, right? And that's one thing with AIs. They tend to be overconfident, right?
Yeah.
So you have to deal with the confidence. The other thing is, luckily, so to say, in sustainability, there's also something which is an auditing process. So when a company is actually publishing a sustainability report, it has to be verified by a third party. That's your KPMGs, that's your Ernst & Young, that might be a smaller auditing company, yeah? So they put their name on the line to check whatever you have been producing is actually compliant with the regulatory standard, and you need to make transparent where's the data coming from, what are your confidence levels, etc. Right? So you have to make that.
What if they also use AI to verify your data?
We make their life easier, but we don't offer AI to them, right?
Somebody else is going to do that at some point, and then you have a problem. I mean, AI seems super practical in this area. Do you think there was recently the EU AI Act was recently launched? Do you think that will impact this in any way?
Yeah, I tell you something. Actually, our platform, because we are co-funded by the European Union, we're not the only solution on the market, but we're the only one that has been working with the European Innovation Technology Center and is therefore co-funded by European Union. And actually, our AI is actually complying with following the EU AI Act principles. So that is not something that comes easy. That's work, So we have been working with our data scientists to set everything up in that way that we actually are following that.
Right. So your companies who use your tool, they don't need to worry about it because it's already.
Yeah, it's directly there.
Yeah. Like, what are some of the examples?
That's not really the common thing in the market, but yeah.
And so I don't know how into the tech you are, but is there anything you see now, AI related or anything that could be relevant for you to boost your product solutions with, that is kind of it's on the periphery right now? It's a fringe thing. It's a small little new thing, but that could become mainstream quite soon. Is there any sort of new, I wouldn't call it trend, but feature or thing that you think will take over how we measure work with sustainability? So AI obviously has been one such example.
Yeah, I think what we are putting a lot of energy into and what we have been always focusing since day one, and that continues to be exciting for us, is the forefront of agentic AI. And combining that with APIs. Again, what I said earlier, depending on who you work with, you can't force them to just like jump up 10 years in progress, right? You can still, like in our system, you can drag and drop a file into the system. You can even type in manually. I spent 10 euros on this. You can do that. I can also take a photo of a invoice I want to digitalize and then send it to the platform. I can do that. I can work in the most old school way. Obviously, we are more interested to understand what is on the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah, progress.
But you need the flexibility, and you understand, like you need the old world and the new world. Like you have maybe things still in your operations which are 10 years behind. You have areas in your organization where, and you have some customers who are like, are very much in the forefront. Like it can't be new enough for them. So obviously we spend a lot of energy on that side. So when I'm talking about that side, I'm talking about agentic AI and I'm talking about APIs. And I think that's I think this going to continues to be interesting as far as like what we can do in order to help sustainability managers succeed at their work.
Do you have a roadmap for the next 5 years? I mean, I guess you can't share any details, but is there anything you hope will have changed in 5 years?
Oh, it's going to continue to evolve. It's going to continue to evolve. I mean, I'm not going to share like the exact roadmap we're having like in this
right.
call, but like I'm like super excited about what's coming. Like the team is working on some things which is just like next level, and I'm really excited for them to get launched. But yeah, I think it's on this of agentic AI. I think the next year is just going to continue to be like a lot of innovations in that space. And I think the other aspect is going to be like also make it accessible for organizations. So you can do like innovation and then you need to make innovation that is useful. That brings me back to the very first thing you asked me in this podcast, which is around the user experience of things. So obviously that's a continuous improvement. And then the other aspect is also education and actually just access to the solution, right? So how can we get the solution to as many people as possible and educate and possible with the least education necessary because it's so easy to use, but still educate and creating awareness for sustainability managers, what they can change as far as their workflow to just like multiply the impact they can have for the organization.
Do you actually, I think education is very interesting because we also provide education to companies, tech education. So it's not exactly the same niche, but do you have an approach where education is a part, like a cornerstone of the solutions you provide? How do you work making sure that the organizations you go to or want to work with in the future have enough knowledge?
I mean, one thing we constantly do there obviously is updating our customers on what is changing on the product. So if we have new innovations out, we obviously tell them, we offer ways for them to learn more about them, to get educated about like what impact that would have for them if they would start to adapt to it. And then I think like just generally speaking, I think through events and conferences, etc., creating awareness. We're hosting a sustainability and AI conference in 3 weeks from now here in Munich, our annual summer conference. We just invite a lot of sustainability managers and try to get them up to speed as far as like what is actually possible. And I can tell a lot of people don't know yet, right? I mean, like that you can automate so many things about your workflow.
What's it called? The event? How do we find the event? Anybody who's listening?
So just on our website, footprintintelligence.com/conference. And yeah, I don't know when this episode is going to be launched, but in case it's launched before the 24th of July, then reach out to me in case it's already full.
Okay. Sharing the screen. So it's this one. Yeah. Exclusive Sustainability Leadership Summer Conference. Good. I think it's so important for people to get together and talk about this because there's always innovation happening.
Yeah, I mean, like, and then it's really about, I think there's a gap also because obviously sustainability managers, they're not IT managers. They're not like they're focusing on other things, right? They're focused, they want to drive impact. They don't want to know about every little digital snippet of code, right? And that's also not how we communicate to them. We help them to communicate then to the rest of the organization in that way so they know how to implement it. How does the IT team, for example, understand what the sustainability team would like to do with AI? And we help them with that. Because it's also, that's a challenge, if I may just say it as one of the last points. Like, I think it's not just about like them understanding it and them seeing the value, but it's also helping them to tell the rest of the organization that this is necessary. This is the future, and also any kind of maybe misconception or any kind of maybe fear as far as using AI that we can take out of the way, by creating awareness, by educating people, by supporting them. That's also part of our job, right? Specifically these days, not everyone is yet open to it. So we obviously need to do also our job to support them in that process. And actually, one more last thing is like, you can also combine it with bigger efforts. For example, that's one of the things why we're working with AWS and why we're working with Couchbase is that once you set things, once you make your organization agentic AI ready, footprint intelligence is maybe what you want to use in sustainability. But there are other parts of the organization, let's say, like how to automate your mobility management. You can, like, there is a way to unlock it one level higher so other organizations can benefit from it, where we just one of the relationship we have in sustainability managers, one of the relationships that utilize that infrastructure. I mean, there be other areas of the organization they can utilize that too.
That's a really good point. We forget that sustainability is not just, a greenwashing factor. It's not just the environment and helping the world. It's also helping the business genuinely improve and becoming more efficient, because that is the best way, right, to reduce waste.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So if I get you right, you're saying that sustainability leaders, they should focus not on the tech and the code part, obviously, but they should definitely focus on evangelizing sustainability, AI supported sustainability in their organizations. Is there anything else they're not doing today that you think they should be doing? Maybe after listening to this call?
They should do exactly what you just said. And then they should also, I think one thing we love to advocate for, there's AI, artificial intelligence, and everything is great about that. We should think about responsibility. We just did win the responsible AI award in London by sustainabilityit.org, because I think it's really using AI where it makes sense. You can use AI also. You mentioned about, other aspects as well, as far as like if you don't use it in the right way, right? And you can also use it for things maybe it doesn't make sense. So I think one thing we should also talk more about is responsible AI. And we should always keep in mind that sustainability will not succeed without human intelligence, no matter how much AI you add on top. If there's no human intelligence, it's not going to work, because we actually advocating teams, that sounds contradicting, to integrate more human intelligence. And what I mean with that is that you're taking more people of the organization into your sustainability efforts. Sustainability is not a silo effort only a few people of the company should work on in the organization. It should be something that is open, accessible, and where every employee feels appreciated to share their ideas, what the organization could do in order to drive impact, and integrating the motivation and the drive that people have in all kind of pockets of the organization, be it marketing, be it purchasing, be it facility management, be it whatever, and connect the dots, because the sustainability manager itself will not change the organization. The sustainability manager can facilitate and empower for change. And I think integrating more leveraging the human intelligence that the organization has into the sustainability efforts is something sustainability managers should also do more.
I think that's a fantastic point to end this talk on. More agentic AI, but also more human intelligence.
Exactly. Yeah.
I appreciate you. Thank you for coming on. It's been great to talk to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.